Today, I want to talk about something almost every capable, responsible woman experiences, but rarely ever talks about really without any shame. It's that stop and start pattern. You begin something with great intentions. You're motivated, you're excited, you're hopeful, and then somewhere along the way, something slows down. Eventually, you pause and you wonder, am I doing this right? What's wrong with me? And we completely stop together. I want to say this clearly right now. There is nothing wrong with you. Stopping and starting and starting and stopping, it's not a character flaw. It's really just information. When we understand why it's happening, then we can finally build the follow through without pressure. We finally will understand what it is, what's happening, and then we can know what comes next. It's not about motivation. It's about making the aligned steps to move forward. Welcome to the Flourish Podcast for faith-driven women who are ready to take responsibility for their health, time, and calling. I'm Stephanie Book, and I coach women to gain clarity, create simple systems, and build intentional structure so they can move forward with consistent, faith-led action in the work God is calling them to build. If you're ready to live and lead with alignment, peace, and purpose, this is the place for you. Let's begin. So today we're going to unpack that. We're going to talk about motivation. We're going to talk about structure and other things that might help us move forward so that we are not in that cycle of starting and stopping over and over again. So if we're going to stop that habit of starting and stopping, let's break this down. So the first one I want you to understand is that it's not a motivation problem. We tend to blame motivation first. We tell ourselves we just need to want it more, or we need to try harder, or be more disciplined. But motivation will fade for all of us. Believe me, we all can go through that. But I know your problem is that you're not more motivated, or you don't have a desire to do what it is that you want to do. I'm sure that you have discipline. I mean, yes, we can all work on our disciplines, but I know that's not what's holding you back. Follow through doesn't come from that constant motivation. It really comes from support. We talked last week about having clarity and creating that focus. And then once we're clear on our focus and we know what we want to do, we want to start, but we want to keep the momentum going. And so when we're holding on to motivation as our only thing to build consistency, it eventually is going to collapse. It doesn't mean that you failed. It just means maybe your system wasn't designed to last. Pressure tries to replace that support, but it never works for long. Pressure exhausts, but support sustains. So once we understand that motivation is not the answer, the next thing we want to talk about is structure. Structure will help actually protect your momentum. This is where structure is important, not the kind that feels rigid or overwhelming, but just simple systems protect momentum because it will reduce fatigue. And when we have the focus and the clarity that we've talked about, then our structure will help us stay in tune with the things that are aligned with our next steps. So structure gives us, actually brings peace because it allows us to have the movement that we need to take and one action at a time. When we follow through with that type of movement, then that structure is just going to aid us. It's going to help us as we move forward. When you don't have to decide what to do, when to do it, and how to do it every single day, your energy isn't depleted as quickly. And that's often where follow through breaks down. If we don't have those small, repeatable actions, then we are constantly in that decision mode. And then we can be in inaction because we've spent so much time wondering what the next piece is or what the next thing is that we should do. But if we have that structure, if we have a little bit of a system in place or a rhythm in place, then we know. I recently just kind of went through this because I had made out a map for myself about the different things that I wanted to do, but then I was falling away from it. And so I had certain things I wanted to do, like Mondays, I want to focus on writing and making sure that my podcasts are ready to go for recording and I have my newsletters ready to go and all of those things. And then Tuesday, I have my live Flourish TV, and then I make sure that those articles are ready to post. And a lot of times I will do another type of video or two, some recording. And then Wednesday, I know is kind of a catch-up day and then a pause day where I help my mom. And then Thursday is my day where I will record. I will do recordings of my videos, the things that I prepared on Monday, or maybe, and then working on some content. And then Friday would be the time for editing and for maybe putting in those missing pieces and making sure that I'm updating my CRM and all those little tasks and things like that to get me moving. And then, of course, looking at what's coming ahead for the next week. But I've been out of structure. And so I'll be honest, here it is Saturday afternoon, the time that I had said that I wanted to by 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I wanted to make sure that all of that work was done so that I could enjoy the rest of my evening. And I didn't follow my structure. And so I'm here. And it's okay. I'm not a failure. But I also recognize that I was doing things that were out of the rhythm that I created for myself. That tells me two things. One, either I was not following the structure because I was allowing those other things instead of having the one focus in my way, or it could just be that I just had an off week. It could be a lot of different things. So it doesn't mean it's a failure. I'm a failure that I didn't get that. But when I'm aligned in my structure, I know things are going to run smoother. But it might also give me, maybe I'm having too many things on my plate. Maybe I need to pare down, and I do a lot of different things. So there might be an area where I'm like, maybe that needs to step away right now because I'm not staying with my focus. And so that structure is to help you. It teaches you things. It helps you see if you laid out a structure, but it's too robust or it's not clear enough for you, then you might be out of sync with it, or you're trying to do too many things, or you're scattered too many things. And so then we'll go back to that clarity. So, really structure, it doesn't limit you. It really just supports you. And so I would love for you to kind of think of it in that way. It's really a good way for you to understand structure as a way to help you move forward rather than it being strict to you that it stops you from moving forward. So I thought now, of course, I love to try to bring in scripture when I can. I don't always, but with this series, I just feel like it's important. I want us to remember that we're not relying on willpower. And that's like the third area. A lot of times we're relying on willpower alone to move us through. And that is not going to help us to continue. That's where a lot of the starting and stopping comes from, because we're trying to do things on our own. And scripture reminds us that growth was never designed to be a solo effort. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, "Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow." I love that. Linger on that phrase a little bit. If they fall, it doesn't say if they fail, it says if they fall. The assumption of this passage is not perfection. In reality, movement involves missteps. Growth involves fatigue, and scripture doesn't shame that. It plans for it, right? If we're falling, if we're doing this with someone else, then someone is there to help pick us up. We're not having to do this all alone. And so that's where it's a great way to bring in other women that are walking alongside of you, maybe in networking with one another, supporting each other, maybe having some time where you can encourage each other in scripture, or meeting together in a Bible study, or reading a book together, or just having that accountability that can come as you work together with someone else and say, these are the things that I have. Will you keep me accountable to that? And if you have some friends that are there that will listen to you, that will be honest and real with you, they'll say, you know what? I hear these different things, and maybe you need to look at your focus. Maybe you're too spread, or maybe there's too many things on your plate, or maybe we need to focus on the most important and not worry about what all those other things in your season right now. So we're not meant to do this alone. And so let's keep that in mind as we're moving forward. This verse is often support can also look like structure that reduces decision fatigue, rhythm that doesn't require constant motivation, and systems that catch you when your energy dips. We weren't designed to rely on willpower alone. Willpower tries to hold us up by force. Support distributes the weight, and that's why pressure eventually breaks consistency. But support strengthens it. In Philippians 2:2-4, it says, "Encourage us to be of the same mind, united in purpose, and not driven by selfish ambition, but to consider others and walk in humility." And then a few verses later, Philippians 2:13 says, "For it is God who works in you both to will and to work for his good pleasure." I love this because, again, it reframes the follow through entirely. You're not alone. You're not the sole source of your consistency. You're not meant to manufacture discipline on your own, right? all of it. You're not supposed to do it alone, right? God is actively working within you, shaping your desires, strengthening your effort, and sustaining your movement. We're calling for support of those around us and then connected to the vine, connected to the Father. Support isn't a sign of weakness. It's alignment in how growth is designed to work. Willpower tries to carry everything by force, but support distributes the weight. Having support, it's not failure, it's formation. It's instead of asking why I can't stay consistent, a better question is, what kind of support would make this more sustainable? How am I including God into the things that He's already doing in and through me? How am I including Him in my steps? Follow through grows when we stop trying to carry everything by ourselves and instead partner with the Lord and allow the structure and rhythm to lift us up as we fall, and inviting those people to come along on our way. Again, this isn't weakness, it's wisdom. When you view follow through this lens, the question changes everything. And that starting and stopping can be less frequent because you are no longer trying to carry everything on your own. You're connected to God. You have some support around you. You have some systems in place that help you decide on what's most important. And then you have that clarity and focus that we talked about last week. You know exactly what that next step is, so that it's no longer based on motivation, but based on the next right thing, with including the Father in your steps and having that support around you so that you can step into what's next. I do have in my Faith and Flourish Entrepreneur Toolkit, there is a whole section about accountability. And I just thought about that. That would be a great resource to provide for you as well. I have lots of different resources. I'm always talking about that, but that whole accountability section actually gives you a framework so that you can invite somebody else in that is walking alongside you. You have some questions that you can ask each other, and some ways to stay accountable through the week. So that might be a great resource. So just put Faith in the comments, and I will get that to you, or reach out to me, of course, on social media, and I will get that to you, because I just thought about that, like what a great way to have that resource for you. So in this area of starting and stopping, the question should no longer be like, why can't I stay consistent? Maybe it becomes of what kind of support could make this more sustainable. So that's a great thing to listen to reflect on as you're moving forward. So I kind of give you two questions that you can answer this week to journal down. So where do you tend to drop off and lose momentum? So first of all, let's identify that. Is it doing something that maybe it's just not aligned, that's not in the right season for right now? Is it that you've got too many things going on and you need to focus on something different? Is it a fear that's holding you back? Is it something a system that you could put in place? Do you maybe need someone to keep you accountable because it's something you don't always enjoy doing, but you want to do that to move you forward, right? Sometimes we have, in business, as business owners, we do things sometimes that we don't really love to do, but it's also, if we're aligned with the main purpose we want to do, sometimes we take those steps. But maybe it's that accountability that you need to bring in to say, hey, will you check in with me on Friday afternoons to make sure I edited my podcast so that I'm not doing that on Sunday night, right? So that would be a great thing for me to ask support. And then, of course, have you connected with God? Have you invited Him into your decisions, in your movement? And maybe that's a place where is lacking and it's causing that trouble for you. Okay, so where do you tend to drop off and lose momentum? And then the next is, what feels unsustainable about the way you've been trying to stay consistent? Read that again. What feels unsustainable about the way you've been trying to stay consistent? So what are things that you're doing? What are things that maybe you've got in your system? Because we all have a structure, whether we like it or not. It might be a loose structure that doesn't have a lot of rhythm, but we usually have things that we do, and we do them in certain ways. Maybe your structure is you watch reels for an hour because you didn't want to edit the podcast instead of just editing the podcast. Maybe that's not very sustainable, right? Putting a bunch of things before, and then you're in last minute mode trying to get that done, and you're spending your Sunday evening editing podcasts. You can tell that's not my favorite thing to do, is edit my podcast. And so that's something that I will put off because I'll find other things. And sometimes they're good things that I'm putting forward in front of it, but sometimes that's not going to be sustainable because I'm going to get tired of spending my Sunday evenings trying to edit my podcast. So there might be something different. Maybe I can recognize something that's not keeping me that's not sustainable that maybe I can replace with. Ask yourself what feels sustainable about the way you've been trying to stay consistent. See if there's something there that needs to be altered. Maybe, like I said, I kind of had a framework of how I like to do my week, but maybe that's too much and it's keeping me from being consistent because I'm trying to do too many things. So ask yourself those questions. You know yourself better, the most. So you're going to be able to ask those questions, but they're not always fun to ask yourself, right? Because we just want to just like pretend. We want to use those old excuses. Oh, well, I just was distracted, or I don't know. I had a lot of things on my plate. I was really busy this week. Yes, maybe you were busy this week, but maybe there's something that needs to be changed in your system, in your rhythm, so that it is more sustainable and you can see the progress better. Just notice what comes up without any judgment. Awareness is going to be that beginning for change. So take a look, evaluate yourself. It's okay. We're not judging ourselves, but that awareness will really give you a better sense of peace, and you'll have less chances of doing that starting and stopping because you'll have alignment. You'll have a clear idea of what's most important right now and what systems are going to drive you forward and be one that's supportive to you rather than stopping you. A great way of reframing for this week is, instead of saying, why can't I stick with this? Ask yourself, what needs to be simplified or supported? And then start smaller than you think. Don't make this a big, huge decision. Just one little tiny step. I talk about that all the time, and it can make all of the difference. What needs to be simplified or supported? Instead of asking yourself, why can't I stick with this? Because how many of us have done that, right? Instead of like, let's really evaluate, what needs to be simplified? What needs to be supported? Am I thinking about 12 things, or am I thinking about one thing? Am I putting too high of expectations on myself? And maybe those need to be lowered. Am I expecting the impossible for myself, but would never expect that from somebody else? And then another one, I didn't even talk about this. Am I pouring from an empty cup? Or am I filled up? Have I taken time? Maybe sometimes the best thing for the starting and stopping is not, it seems funny, but maybe it's stepping back, taking a little bit of rest, taking those moments so that you're not like me. When I am not put together and I'm editing my podcast on Sunday night, that is not going to fuel my soul well. It's not going to support me for my upcoming week because I'm already coming into that feeling behind. And so the rest might be a good thing in there, and making sure that we have time for that set aside for those things. And it's okay if things aren't perfect. We're not talking about perfection. We're just looking for alignment and having the peace that comes as we step forward with a focus. So here's a simple reframe that you can live by this week. Ask, instead of saying, why can't I stick with this? Ask, what needs to be simplified or supported? Start smaller than you think and just choose one thing to build consistency around. Not everything, one rhythm, one habit, one focus. Follow through grows when your expectations match your capacity. If you're ready to move from clarity into consistent action, this is where that support matters, okay? So I do want to highlight my goal and planning bundle. If you feel like you need a little bit of help with this, the goal and planning bundle exists to help you implement without overwhelm, so your plans feel doable and not heavy. So just put goal in the comments below or message me as usual. All of my links are in the show notes, so you can go there, of course, and reach out to me in any way. And that bundle might be something that will help you if you need a little bit more structure or rhythm. You're feeling like that starting and stopping is happening a lot, then that would be a great resource for you to step into and use. And of course, you can always reach out if you have questions, and we can define what your next best steps are. I love being able to coach women to help them even come up with a framework. It keeps me so much more on track, and it gives me the freedom to do the things that are important to me. When I fall out of that structure, and we're human, we're all going to do that. Maybe we did have some things that happened during the week that changed your whole rhythm. And that happens. I'm not talking about perfection, but I would love to be able to talk with you and see what works. What's the most important for you right now? What focus do you need to be connected to in this season? And then what are those action steps you can take to move forward? What kind of framework can we build for you over a 90-day period, trying that out and seeing how that can change, how it can shift everything. And so just put chat in the comments again, or just reach out to me, and I would be happy to have that conversation with you, so we can look at what your next step is. So as we close today, I just want to remind you that you're not inconsistent. You're just learning. Progress is built one supported step at a time. So give yourself permission to build slowly, intentionally, and with support. Friends, I really hope that this episode was helpful to you. And I'm just loving this series because I think sometimes we just expect so much of ourselves. And honestly, sometimes these little tiny shifts that we make in our lives, in our schedules, in our systems, in our support, all of those things can make a huge difference in the way that we're growing, the way that we're moving forward. And I know you have big goals. I know you have specific things that you want to see in your life, whether it's gaining some financial help for your family, or it's building to another level, or it's starting a ministry that is just on your heart, but you're just not sure if you can do it all those different things that are on your heart, you can do that. And I hope that these weeks that we've been talking in January and here now in February are helpful to you, that are giving you that foundation so you can move forward with a little more confidence and not relying so much on that motivation, but more on aligned steps one at a time. So friends, please remember that you are worthy and capable of living a full and flourishing life. Success isn't just possible, it's meant for you. Take care. Thank you for spending time with me today. If this episode encouraged you, I invite you to take one simple, intentional step forward. You will find many resources linked in the show notes to support you as you build with clarity and faith-led action. If this conversation resonated with you, please share the podcast so that this message can reach other women who are ready to move forward with purpose. Until next time, remember, you are worthy and capable of living a full and flourishing life. Success isn't just possible,